This is ICASTnews.com, live and direct from the United Nations headquarters in New York City, USA. And this is 10 by 20 Cafe Forum. Joining us today is one of the UN's most knowledgeable people about one of the most crucial issues facing us, the environment, Jamil Ahmad. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Deputy Director of the UN Environment, used to be called the Environmental Program. I read your reports all the time. You've got a great purview of some of the most perplexing problems of the 21st century, many of which we inherited from the 19th century. I was just reading your report about how Kenya was putting 100 million plastic bags across their land and in the ocean every year. So you must rejoice that a country like that has made a breakthrough and has now banned plastic bags.
Yes, that's a great achievement, and we regard it something in which we have contributed in raising that awareness about the harmful effect that plastic bags are having on developing countries, in many developing countries. And to tell you, Kenya is not the only country which has done that. There are many other countries who have taken that decisions. Rwanda, in the neighborhood of Kenya, was the first one in that part of Africa to ban the use of plastic bags first of all, and there are many others are following it. So this awareness is the result of years of work that our institution, our organization has done in partnership with others, and to tell people that it's our duty, our moral duty and obligation to protect our environment.
Well, I wish you'd move beyond just doing this in developing countries and do it in the developed countries, like this one, the United States. Right outside we have problems in the East River with plastic bags and whatnot. And I think there's a certain arrogance in the world that thinks that, you know, places like the United States or France or Great Britain have all the answers. And I think that what Kenya's just done, following lots of African countries.
No, let me correct myself. I think when I mentioned developing countries, it's not just we are doing it only in developing countries, but the fact that there is a need for capacity which we are addressing through it, the help of developed countries. So in that sense, yes, we are doing it all over the world, and the campaigns that we have launched over the years for different aspects of environmental protection, for conservation, for natural resources, for resource efficiency, they are universal. All our campaigns, all our work is universal, and now that we have a universal agenda in the forms of Agenda 2030, which has literally done away with the differentiation between developed and developing when it comes to the implementation of the SDGs and the targets that it has. So it is a universal agenda, and all the UN family, including UN Environment, is working in partnership with everybody, with all the stakeholders, with member states, with private sector, and with academia to work on these issues.
Let's talk for a minute about the SDGs. SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. UN's got all kinds of abbreviations, kind of like alphabet soup. But the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly how they focus on what, if we were to go up from the moon and look at the Earth, would be most of the planet, the blue part of the planet, water. Where do the Sustainable Development Goals focus on water, and particularly on oceans?
There's a specific goal, goal 14, which is devoted to oceans, and then there are specific targets accompanying that goals. But as I said, this is an integrated agenda. All the goals are correlated. So while we will be working, the international community will be working on achieving Sustainable Development Goal 14, it is related across the board to all other goals. So the success of one goal will be the success of others, and vice versa. The failure in one goal will be the failure of others. It will have negative impact on the achievement of the targets and goals that are outlined in the Agenda 2030. Oceans cover 2/3 of the planet. Water, 2/3 of the planet. It provides food source, as a food source for 3.5 billion people on the earth. Out of 7.5 billion currently, almost half depend on oceans for their food, for their livelihood, for their many other things. You know, oceans are at the center of human well-being, as part as it's whether it's transportation.
And we probably all came out of the oceans at one time in the evolutionary chain too.
Well, there are scriptures, holy scriptures, would describe that life itself came out human life is originated from water. So the main source of life is water.
So, what do you think has been the unique contribution that we've seen developing, at least since the summer, of this hyper consciousness of the need to preserve, to clean up, and to do things from the ocean? Why was the UN Oceans Conference this summer so remarkably successful?
I think you have put it very rightly. It was a remarkable success for a number of reasons. And one reason which comes instantly to my mind was that it happened at the right time, at the right place. The SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, were adopted just recently. The Paris Agreement has just happened a year ago. And then came the Ocean Conference. Another factor for the success was the preparation work, the preparatory work that has gone into it, the leadership that was there, and the readiness of the willingness of the international community to join in to protect their oceans, to increase the marine protected areas, to conserve the areas, coastal areas, and to the ecosystem services that are provided by the oceans. So all this came together at the right time and at the right place, and this was a big success.
And maybe under the right man. Leaders sometimes matter.
Yes, I did mention the leadership of...
I mean, you know, the former president of the General Assembly really did something that it wasn't just a campaign slogan. I mean, it was something near and dear to his heart.
Definitely, I agree with you.
So how realistic do you think it is to say by a few years from now that we will have 10% of the world's near oceans, near land masses preserved as marine sanctuaries? From your point of view, of someone who's seen environmental issues rise in interest but still conflict with people's economic problems, people's economic circumstances, do you think that we're going to make this goal of 10% by 10 by 20?
I think we have to remain optimistic. We have to hope that it will be done, because the momentum that was generated by the achievement, by the momentum that was generated by the approval of the Paris Agreement, by the implementation of the Paris Agreement within 1 year, that is still there. The world is still ready to move ahead on this, and the fact that we have set specific time-bound targets for us will propel the movement towards implementation for these goals. And I hope we in UN Environment have launched a Clean Seas campaign, and 30 countries, right from Indonesia to Brazil and Canada and Kenya, they have all joined in this campaign to work on the objectives of the Ocean Conference. The targets that were identified
and the
call for
Clean
action.
Seas initiative, this is cleaning up pollution largely?
No, this is broader than that. It includes implementing and formulating new laws to protect oceans, to clean oceans from pollution, and to increase marine protected areas, and to do all sorts of acts which can protect the health of oceans.
A couple of times in our conversation you've mentioned the Paris Accords. This isn't your first day living in New York or being in the UN with some contact with America. What do you do when you hear a leader of the United States want to disassociate this big country from the Paris Accords? How do you react to that?
I think Paris Agreement has the backing of the international community, and a lot is happening in the implementation of Paris Agreement. The cities are working on it, the multinational corporations are working in it, then the civil society is aware, and the population at large is aware that we have to have an ambitious agenda to combat climate change. And if we don't do that, we are all in for troubled times, because global warming is happening, glaciers are melting, oceans are getting acidification, and all this require a collective action by all of us. It's a global problem which will need a global solution.
You go around as a representative, a high representative of the UN environment, speaking to lots of people about sustainability. What do you find in the different places that you go to is the leading question or the leading issue that people really seem to be concerned with?
I think the leading question is the awareness about the problems that people face. We need to make them realize at the grassroots level that unless and until all of us act together towards the challenges that we face, that whether that is climate change, whether that is pollution, but at the back of it and the center of it is poverty. The central problem that remains to be addressed today is poverty. 760 million people, perhaps still close to billion, they live in extreme poverty. Another 700
how
million
much
people.
environmental improvement can you afford is some of that question, isn't
So
it?
that is the challenge, exactly.
So you've been at this, you were in Nairobi working in the Secretariat for a number of years. You've watched the environment go from a program to just being so important that it's just got one name now, right? UN Environment. Are you optimistic or are you concerned that a slowdown in the economy in the world, people's selfishness, the pressures of people with specific economic interests, whether it's the fishermen or oil companies, are going to get in the way? Do you think that the UN sustainable goals are going to be reached, most of them? Which ones do you think we will achieve, and which ones do you think will be the very last train, the caboose on the train that'll come in at the very last moment?
I think I referred to it earlier. You know, we have to work on all the goals as one target, as one goal. The integrity, the integrated nature of this agenda requires us to work in partnership on all goals, because if we prioritize that we have to achieve one first and the other second later, that will not work. We have, as an example, the Millennium Development Goals, in which environmental sustainability was an afterthought in one way.
An afterthought.
Yes, that's what people see and say. But on the other hand, there was progress in most of the MDGs, and that progress was not equal, that progress was not sufficient, but yes, there was progress. So these SDGs are building on the progress that was achieved by the MDGs, and they are completing the unfinished agenda of the MDGs. In that sense, while there will be prioritization at national level according to the needs, national needs of each country, we at the global level cannot afford to do that, and the global community will have to address all goals in equal measure and in equal attention.
Well, from the Deputy Director of United Nations Environment, the idea that you have a global goal is really important to us, because our goal on this program is largely concerned with, 10 by 20 and reaching those goals. And it's wonderful and kind of you to come by and give us this higher perspective, broader purview. And I hope that maybe in 6 months you'll come back and we can discuss what's improved and also what hasn't improved, what's disappointed as the UN tries to improve the environment around the world in all different spheres. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you very much. But if I may
Yes.
add to it, while I will be happy to meet you anytime, but we will be having a universal meeting of the World Environment Ministers in Nairobi in December, in the first week of December. The United Nations Environment Assembly will be meeting to discuss pollution as a theme, and the main theme is a pollution-free planet. The main theme is pollution-free planet. The environment minister from the whole world will be congregating there, along with private sector, along with scientific community, and with other stakeholders, to discuss how the world can again take stock of what is happening in the area of fighting pollution, including in the oceans, including in the air, in all forms, and how we can accelerate our work towards meeting the objectives of the Ocean Conference, of the 10 by 20 initiative, and all other targets that we have set for ourselves in this field.
Well, I did not know about the conference. I think that's wonderful. I hope that we can go from ICAS News, because the more we cover the efforts to change and make things better, the more we're ready to explain to the world of not only what needs to be done, but how it needs to be done. And one of the things that's so impressive about United Nations environment is how you're preparing toolkits and public service announcements and new ways of thinking about old problems. And the new ways of thinking about old problems are really important. So again, sir, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
For icastnews.com, live and direct from United Nations headquarters in New York City on the East River, which does need to be cleaned up. For Cafe Forum 10 by 20, I'm Jonathan Sanders.